Right. So first guy we're going to break down is, of course, Jase McLellan. He's a 5'11", 212-pound senior who's a former four-star running back, the seventh running back in his class. And of course, the first thing that we always break down when it comes to these running back positions is their patience and vision. And I'm going to start with you, Rupert. What did you see when it came to Jase McLellan's patience and his vision that maybe stuck out to you?
There's just a lot of meh watching him for me. I did have one note like where he was just patient in the hole, let the blocks develop in front of him, and was able to just kind of follow, the guard and get a first down out of it. I didn't see a ton of good vision. It was basically if it was in front of him, he got it. He would just steamroll into the hole for the most part. So I didn't really see any kind of outstanding vision. He was a patient runner, I would say, and I feel like he did understand, like what the blocking assignments were trying to accomplish. So I can at least kind of give him a nod there, but really nothing special in the patience and vision department for me.
What about you, Cooper? Would you agree with that? Did you see kind of the same stuff, or did you see something different?
Um, Good patience, like Rupert noted. I felt like he was calm when he would take the snap. He wasn't like in a hurry to just dart off somewhere and just make a guess. Like he was calm enough to sit back there. I felt like he was reading the leverage of the defense, reading where his blocking scheme was designed to go. He generally found the right crease and, wasn't getting his team behind the chains because of bad decisions. Um, and overall, I mean, I think efficient footwork was something that I noticed a bunch of times. So I think that's related to vision in the sense that sometimes you see it, but you see it a second too late. And so your feet aren't in the right position to make the cut that you need to make. I felt like he didn't have a whole lot of wasted movement. He wasn't doing a bunch of like jittering in the backfield. His feet he was in control of his feet. So as soon as he saw where he needed to go, he was able to get there. He just didn't have a whole lot of wasted movement in the backfield, which I liked. So I felt like he was really technically sound. I think to Rupert's point, I didn't see a whole lot of like spectacular creativity or manipulating the defense. I didn't see a lot of shading one way to suck a defender into a wrong gap and then shooting the other way. He wasn't playing chess while they were playing checkers or anything like that. But I felt like he was technically sound and
Yeah.
doing what he was supposed to do as a running back.
And that's kind of the way I felt too, right? He doesn't have a nasty dead leg. He doesn't really break people down in the hole. But what he does do, and I think Rupert, you kind of pointed this out, he looks a little bland, I would say, as a running back, but I don't necessarily think bland's a problem. He didn't do a lot of east to west dancing in the backfield. He saw the hole that was blocked for him, and I don't think I ever saw him take the wrong hole. I would slow the film down. I would watch like step by step of him running, and he chose the right hole more often than he didn't. And he would just get what was blocked for him. And I think, personally speaking, I think coaches are going to love that. Um, more often than not, he wasn't breaking off. And we're going to talk about this when it comes to his speed a little later, because I don't think he's a dynamic speed guy. But what I did notice about him is he consistently gets 4 or 5 yards. And while that might not get you huge 25, 30-point fantasy days, I mean, coaches are going to love that, right? They want a guy that can go out there on first down, make it a 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, and get your offense in good position. Now, how is that going to translate to the fantasy world? I don't know if that's going to be something that we're going to want on our fantasy roster. He might be a better real life running back than he is a fantasy running back. I think that could potentially be a problem with him. But I do like how he went north and south, and he went what was blocked for him. And that's something that I wouldn't necessarily say vision was a negative for him, because I enjoyed the vision. One thing that I do want to kind of get you guys' take on, I noticed a lot of times he was facing, 7, 8-man stack boxes. When you got somebody like Jalen Milroe in the backfield, you're not really worried about him dicing you up as a passer. So does that play an impact where maybe he didn't break off some of these big runs? I think his longest run was like a 30-yard run this season. So he didn't break off a huge run, but did he have the opportunity to do that, or was that something that maybe he was limited by his quarterback play a little bit?
Well, I saw at least one really big run on the game that I watched. So one of the games that I studied was the Michigan game in the college football semifinals. So a lot of people saw that game live. I saw that game live, and the play that I'm talking about was probably his best play all season. I mean, not that I watched every Alabama game or every snap, but man, there was not a lot of wow moments on Jase McLellan's tape, but this one moment in the Michigan game, it was like, okay, I didn't know he had that in the tank. I mean, there was a bad snap that Jalen Milroe bobbled, but he was calm, kept his eyes up, read the defense, and then the O line kind of opened up a crease to the second level. He found it, hit it. He's one-on-one with a linebacker, and he gave this little shimmy shake and then was gone, exploded out of the cut, took it for a house call. I was like, Jase McLellan, where did that come from? Like, I didn't see it anywhere else on his tape, but he looked really, really good on that one play at least.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, maybe he does that have in the tank, and I just didn't see it in the 2 games that I was watching. You kind of spoke on it a little bit. You saw a little bit of his elusiveness on that one play in the open field, but overall, when I was watching Jase McClellan's elusiveness, I didn't see a whole lot there. What he had in front of him is what he got. He wasn't really breaking people down all that much. Do you guys want to talk his elusiveness? Did you see the same thing? Did you see something different?
Yeah, I was overall pretty disappointed in his elusiveness. There's one play that's just going to stick in my mind. He sneaks out of the backfield to the left side. There's no defender on that side of the field. And he catches a little dump off pass. You know, if it was someone like CMC, that's a house call for 60 yards. And he just runs, the safety runs from across the field, and they just meet each other. And he gets, tackled for like a 15-yard gain instead of, 60 yards. He didn't really make any move to really kind of set him up or, try and get him to break down early. There's just nothing. I was just like, really? Like, man, as soon as I saw him sneak out and there's no one on that side of the field from, the all 22 angle, I was like, oh man, this is a big play. And then,
I think I had
it
one
was
play
first
like that
down, but
on my film too that I was watching where he got around the corner, and I wrote on my notes, I was like, if he was just a little bit faster, I felt like he could have house called this, but he didn't. We're going to talk about his speed here in a second, but yeah, that was something I noticed as well for McClellan.
Yeah, I feel like the only kind of elusiveness he did have, I don't think he's like a real good like accelerator. Doesn't really have the dead leg, but he has like, I guess, kind of decent long speed to where he kind of like can surprise some defenders if he is like bouncing it to the outside. He can kind of accelerate that way, where he's not like having a hard cut. So I saw him beat safeties like trying to get him before he can cut it outside. And he took one for 30 yards or so for a house call in the Ole Miss game I watched. And then there's another time where he, bounced it outside and for his second touchdown that game. So I think he does have, some decent speed. But as far as like elusiveness with like dead legs, jukes, stutter steps, kind of like setting guys up, I just don't think that's in his arsenal.
What about you, Cooper? Did you see the same thing?
Yeah, I would say that this was definitely a net negative for him in terms of evaluating, does he have this trait that will translate to the NFL that leads directly into fantasy points? I would say that he doesn't. Like, he's just not. I saw maybe 2 plays where he made somebody miss, which that's a running back's job at the end of the day, is to make people miss. I mean, it's that his job is to follow his blocks and get what's blocked for him, but then his job is to create and get yards after contact and force missed tackles. And I just didn't really see that in Jase McClellan's game at all. Like you mentioned, Rupert, some build-up speed, but build-up speed's not really what you want from a running back. It's much more important to be quick and explosive in short areas than it is to have long speed at the running back position. And I felt pretty underwhelmed with his short area quickness, his acceleration through cuts, the power in his legs to be able to stick his foot in the ground and change directions and accelerate out of that. I just felt like it wasn't there for Jase McLellan.
You know, it was one thing that I noticed that was really interesting. And every time, because I watched the LSU game, and Jalen Milroe ran a lot in that game. So you saw the tale of two tapes, right? You saw Jase McLellan when he was in the short area, his short area quickness, his elusiveness that wasn't necessarily there. And then you see Jalen Milroe carry a QB draw or a QB end around, and he's breaking people's ankles in the open field. Like it was very like opposite of what you would imagine from the quarterback running back position.
I saw a lot of the same thing in my games.
One thing that I do feel like I really kind of liked about him, though, was, and this is a mixed bag when it comes to Jase McClellan's game, but his power and contact balance. I felt like he showed pretty good power, especially on blocks, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But he ran well for his size. I mean, he's not small by any stretch of the imagination. He's 212 pounds, so he's got pretty good size to him. I would argue that he probably plays a little bigger than that. I liked his power. One thing that I didn't necessarily like was his contact balance. There were two plays versus LSU where I saw him get the ball in the backfield and either trip in the backfield before he hits the hole, or one defender comes around the edge and just swipes at his legs and he goes down. So I feel like his contact balance was a little iffy, but I felt like he ran with good power. What did you guys see? I'll start with you, Cooper, when it came to his power and contact balance.
I made a note, quite a few notes actually, that he finished with good pad level, tended to fall forward. I didn't see a lot of like straight up broken tackles or like the guy we're going to talk about in a minute was like dragging people for 10 yards before
Yeah.
going down. Like I didn't feel like Jase McLellan was that hard to bring down. I didn't feel like he was super powerful. But I felt like he was tough and he wasn't shying away from contact and he wasn't looking for ways to get out of contact. He just, yeah, I mean, like we said with the vision, like he takes what's there. You know, he runs till he gets to a defender and then he falls forward for a yard or two more, and that's who he is. Like he's going to get what's there for him. He's not going to get a whole lot more.
Agreed. You can just tell he's like really well coached. Just, he follows his blocks. He knows the assignments. He runs with good pad level. I also have the same note. Like he does fall forward. He kind of invites contact. Instead of trying to juke a defender, he'll just, smash his shoulder into him. So overall, like I think he has like a spot in the league. I just don't really see much, kind of fantasy upside. But you can tell he's well coached, and that can take him into the NFL. And who knows, maybe he can improve his athleticism a little bit. We've kind of seen that with other players in the league. So it's
We
not.
do know one thing that's going to keep him on the field is his third down skill set. I would say less his pass catching, how he showed that he was able to do this, but his run blocking. I mean, I made several notes all over my sheet that he was very good at his run blocking assignments. He hardly ever missed a run blocking assignment. He would hold guys and push them forward as Jalen Milroe's running around the corner on a QB run. That was something that I really liked about his film. Again, something that's going to keep McClellan on the football field, but does that necessarily translate to fantasy points? I'm not really sure yet. But I did at least like that, his McClellan's third down skill set. What about you guys? Did you notice anything about that?
Well, so run blocking and pass blocking are two different things. And, obviously he's with Jalen Milroe, so he had more run blocking. Typically, a running back doesn't have a lot of run blocking opportunities because they're the ones doing the running, right? A little bit of a unique offense there with Alabama with a rushing quarterback and a lot of design quarterback runs. I had a bunch of really negative notes in pass protection. I felt like he was getting demolished. His technique wasn't good. His effort wasn't good. His awareness wasn't good. I think out of all the running backs we've studied, I had the most negative notes on him in pass pro out of everybody that we've looked at. I
Really?
thought
Because I saw a lot. I saw a lot of run back block reps. Maybe this is what you're talking about. And I had a lot of positive run blocking, or just
right. But
blocking.
run blocking, you're moving forward into somebody. Pass blocking, they're coming at you. It's a totally different thing. And I felt like, I don't know. I made a bunch of negative notes on the film about it. That was probably his weakest area for me. And I felt like when he was asked to go out and pass catch, he looked really natural doing it. He had soft hands. I saw him reaching up and high pointing. He wasn't fighting it. And, that's always nice to see. He was, like we've noted in our previous breakdown of him, he didn't make a whole lot of guys miss after the catch. So he's not this guy that's like super dangerous in open space, but he was sure-handed and a good kind of check down target for his quarterback. So, yeah, pass catching was okay, but pass protection I felt like was pretty rough.
Interesting. I didn't have any bad pass blocking reps on the games I watched. Granted, there weren't a ton of passing in the games I watched, but I had multiple notes like where he stoned, a linebacker running up the middle. Another time they would blitz the DB off the end and he stonewalled him. So I saw multiple like really good pass blocking reps and then other, just holding his own. So I didn't really see that as a weakness in my games. And
this is why we watch multiple games, right? This is why we don't just watch 1 or 2 games and come in here and do the podcast. So if you guys want to see multiple games, of course, we mentioned it earlier, 15% off a promo code Coop on the Dynasty Nerds website. You can watch all these films for yourself. So that's why we do that, right?
Exactly.
So moving on, I kind of alluded to this a little bit, but I don't necessarily know if he's a great fantasy running back. Just because he doesn't do a lot of things. He does a lot of things well. They're going to keep him on an NFL roster, and I think he's going to be an NFL asset. I don't necessarily see him as a fantasy football asset. I don't know if I would take him above the middle to late third. Maybe I'm a little low on him. I don't know. But where are you guys taking him in the rookie draft right now?
I don't know.
I kind of struggled. Go ahead.
I don't know if I am taking him. I mean, I think he's a day 3 pick. Even if you look at his production profile, he's one of those guys that had to wait his turn at Alabama. But then on top of it, Gibbs then transferred in, and he had a significant knee injury. I believe he tore his ACL. So this was his best season. He had 655 yards, which is not great. And so the production's not there. He's a little bit of an older prospect. He's got significant injury history that's getting factored in. He doesn't have a whole lot of special traits. And all that leads me to believe he's probably a day 3 pick. And if I'm going to gamble on a day 3 pick, I just don't think he's that guy that I'm going to gamble on. I think he's got a career as a backup in the NFL. And it's you can't say that a running back's never going to be fantasy relevant because they get hurt so much that sure,
did we see Zamir White being fantasy relevant ever in his career?
Anytime you see a guy that's number 2 on his depth chart, he has to be rostered in a fantasy league because he's one injury away from at least a couple games of decent startable productivity. And that's the thing is with a wide receiver 3, you don't know when he's going to pop off. You don't know when to start him. But with a backup running back, you know exactly when it's time to plug him into your lineup. So these are good guys to have on your dynasty bench. And I do think Jase McLellan probably has a career as a backup in the NFL, but I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that you're going to want to start in fantasy football unless a guy in front of him gets hurt first. So, yeah.
Agreed. I kind of see him, bouncing around in the league as a backup, and I don't really see myself drafting him. Maybe if I have a late 4th round pick, but like you said, I'm probably going to take shots on guys that I see that have high upside or anything like that, where I can envision a little bit, better path to opportunities. But, it may be someone I pick up off the waiver wire, after draft if I got an extra spot.
For sure.